Hello, listeners. Good to be with you all. I'm back from a summer away working at the cabin. And today's episode is thanks to one of our listeners who offered up a topic that we are happy to dive into.
We have Dr. Death with us. We have Eilena back.
Welcome back, Eilena. We're so happy to have you back with us.
Reunited.
And it feels so good.
I would love to change the whole paradigm around midlife crisis to midlife transformation, midlife opportunity. That's kind of the topic of our pod today. Is this stage of midlife is an opportunity very similar to adolescence and puberty. We have one perimenopause and one menopause, and the hormones and the changes are so big. I don't want to say drastic, just big, kind of like big emotions. They're not bad emotions, they're big emotions. And they're so big that it gives us an opportunity to reinvent ourselves and have basically a second adolescence, a second puberty. So that's why I love the idea of a transformation versus a breakdown.
Do you think one of the big differences is also that we kind of celebrate coming into that adolescent change as moving into womanhood, and
Yeah.
we perceive menopause as the withering and dying of our femininity, when actually it's the blossoming of it and the wisdom part of ourselves, right?
Wow, yes. We were just having a conversation yesterday. I was guiding a forest bathing, and a woman was talking to me about this topic afterwards. We were talking about how midlife is an opportunity to reprioritize based on what we've learned and what we know about ourselves. And so maybe it's an opportunity to prioritize health and wellness. And it's about slowing down at this point, but not slowing down because you can't do, just slowing down to actually enjoy.
I don't think it has to be necessarily slowing down too, in that kind of broader sense. I think we can achieve so much. We're living longer and longer as a society.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that curiosity still that comes in, and I want to be a beginner in new ways. And maybe that's partly
Yeah.
personality driven. But why should we stop learning? Why can't I go and train to be a horticulturist if I want to do that, if that's my passion? Or so, I don't know. Eilena's building houses and all this stuff and learning all these new skills. And,
That's right.
and I love the idea too, that we're like, the slowing down is about the mindfulness in maybe a different model. So, the analogies of chopping wood as a version of mindfulness, right? Chopping wood is exertion. It's hard. It's not an easy task. Yet people are doing it at all sorts of ages.
I think it's about the mindfulness piece. And like when I say slowing down, it's like just about like paying attention to where you feel alive at this age. So
Yeah.
to your point, like maybe it is starting something new and just really leaning in to what it is that helps you to feel joyful and alive at this stage in your life. And sometimes, just, like kind of decluttering
Mm-hmm.
and, and leaning into the joy and not the fear of getting older, but the joy of getting older.
So reprioritizing maybe.
Yeah, and decluttering of roles too, I'd add to that. Like we spend a lot of our young to mid adult life in roles, and a lot of our identity gets formed around the role and the responsibility of the role. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a horticulturalist, I'm a counselor, I'm a therapist, I'm a hockey mom, I'm a surf mom, I'm a basketball mom, or I'm a sister, or I'm a caregiver to my elderly parents, or I'm a, sister-in-law, I'm a daughter-in-law. Like there's just so many responsibilities around the different roles. And then our own life force energy gets funneled into these places of judgment around the expectations, because that's what I find kind of eats up the life force energy, is the judgment around the expectations. And then bringing it back to
That we put on ourselves as well, right?
yeah, exactly. And in adolescence, the neuroscience of the adolescent's brain, it's almost like, when caterpillars are in that chrysalis stage of before they're about to become the butterfly, and they literally become this liquid mush inside the chrysalis as they're transforming. That's like an adolescent's brain. So there's a lot of big emotions in that time, and it's totally natural because it's like they're literally the chrysalis about to burst into a butterfly. And we have the same gift available to us in midlife.
Exactly. At this stage in your life, you can really blossom into your greatest, most vibrant butterfly self, because you know yourself so much more than you did as an adolescent. You now have gone through so much life that I feel like this is an opening and a door that opens up where we can actually be who we've always
Who
been,
we are.
kind of, yeah,
Mm,
who we are.
I notice whether it's related to age or the practices that I've brought into my world in, say, the last, 5 to 10 years, where I've really stepped up my mindfulness and my meditations, my breath work, my nature access and stuff like that, and slowed my life down to release some of the stress that I was
mm,
experiencing. I don't know which one leads which, but I am actually learning to view the challenges that come my way as challenges, whereas in my younger days, they just felt like stress. They just
mm,
felt like one more thing that I wasn't prepared to handle and I didn't know how to handle. And now the same thing can come my way, but I'm meeting it as an opportunity to grow instead
mm.
of just being, frightened and how am I going to get through this? I still have those like kind of breakdown moments. This isn't an
Yeah.
absolution of that, but how my mindset is viewing these challenges of life that are coming towards me is very, very different than I've ever met them in my entire life.
I actually just has started experiencing similar in the last couple years. I used to view uh, these kinds of challenges almost like, oh, the universe is against me in this area, and it would turn on the survival stress in my system, and I reframed it to, oh, this is just a problem. A problem is actually not a challenge. A problem is an opportunity. And a problem is something that my adult self has tools to address. And so I'm going to break it down into small pieces and see how my system at this time, depending on what's going on in my environment, depending on where my energy is at, can address the problem. And so I shifted my words. It's because I'm a word person, from
Mhm.
challenge to problem. And then so now my brain understands that problem is like, oh, okay. Like it loves to solve problems. It's like, give me a problem.
It totally.
But like, breaking it down, right? Not like, oh, you are now going to eat this entire elephant in one sitting. No, not possible. So it's like, okay, well, one bite at a time. Survival stress activated in our system actually cuts off the prefrontal cortex creativity. So then we're just in default habits, survival habits. Oh, okay. This is like, we don't even consciously say it. We just unconsciously, okay, this is where I shut down. This is where I withdraw. This is where I unplug from socializing. This is where I say no to going out with friends, or like, we don't even consciously realize it.
Do you guys also notice something I've become aware of as well is this recapitulation of my life and kind of part of how we even came together to be here, our common bond from way back, and looking back into those periods of our lives where, well, I see where I was sick. I see where illness came in for me and how I tapped out of a lot of aspects of life. I also recognize when
Mm.
my son was young, when my husband and I had first split up, how much I was in pure survival at that point too. And even
Oh,
from a
yeah.
standpoint of looking at the memories, now I'm in a place where my physiology feels able to go in and out of rest and digest and not staying in that place like it did for so many years for me.
Wow.
And so I look back and I actually feel quite a bit of sadness of kind of what I feel like I missed out on life because I was a bit checked out. I was doing the things, I was going to work, I was raising a son, I was doing
Totally.
all the stuff, but there were gaps. There were gaps that I just wasn't present.
Yeah.
So have you guys experienced any of that as well? Like, it's really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the human experience, right? That when we go into survival, you're not able to be fully present.
Mhm.
Your body is under stress, your nervous system is in kind of a hypervigilant state. I don't think we can rest and digest the ways that we can when we're not in survival, right? I remember many times in my life too where I can really empathize and remember times in my life when I was in survival mode and wasn't present. But I do think that, to Eilena's point on the pod today, that this time is a time when we can acknowledge and we can, look back on those moments and realize how strong we are, how courageous we are, and how far we've come. And now, with all the tools that we have at this stage in our life, I think we can make choices and we know we can get through a lot. We've got our toolkit is so much bigger. Maybe if we hadn't been in these times, we would not have learned the importance of these practices to help us be better mothers at this stage, to be better friends, to be in relationship with people and nature and our environment. Maybe we wouldn't have learned if we hadn't had those really tough times. So in some ways we may have not been as present, but now we are.
When we're actually in a circumstance, a life situation that is, let's call it a phase or a chapter. Let's say, like a divorce or a separation or a health challenge. That is a period of time, sometimes a few years, sometimes like a decade, right? Sometimes certain situations will last a lifetime, but often they are a chapter. And in that time period, we actually are in survival stress because we're actually swimming the challenge. Like, it's a very real it's an adversity. We're swimming upriver. And I'll speak to like a personal example. This is when I was taking care of my mom when she was still in her home and really resistant to moving to assisted living, where she needed the care but was really resistant. So there was that transition of like decluttering her home, trying to sell her home, and trying to convince her, which took a few years to move. Lots of swimming uphill. And this was me
Yeah.
with you guys, like, just only 2 years ago. You guys saw me in my survival stress, and when you're in it, it's really important to remember that it's a temporary chapter, because otherwise the survival stress tells us this is forever. For anyone listening right now that is going through like a swimming upstream moment, it's okay to give permission to just be in survival stress and not necessarily have presence right now, because it's actually really hard to. I look back and it was really hard for me to be fully present. I had moments of presence because I have a strong yoga practice, but overall, the threads of my system were consumed with the survival mechanisms that were in place just to get my family to safety. And now I've had this period since November of last year where it's taken about half a year for my nervous system to calm down from the survival stress. And that's really normal.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of, Eilena? I thank you for that share, because I went through the same thing you did with my mom, like about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was also in that same space. And what it reminds me of, and hearing what you're saying, is that when we're in it, we're in the survival space, and we're going upstream. We're basically getting ourselves to safety, and
Yes,
we're having to put things into place. So
exactly.
you were having to deal with your mom's health, as I did, deal with the medical staff, get her into assisted and long-term care. And so it's about actually getting your mom to safety at
Exactly.
that point.
That's
So
right.
I remember doing that. And
Yeah.
then when she was safe, even though her health was uncertain and her future was uncertain and she was sick and a lot going on, at least we had her in a safe place. And once we could, like, just to your point, it's about getting your family to safety, getting yourself to safety,
Yeah.
Yeah, such a great analogy.
right? I love that too, because then when your people are safe, even if the future is uncertain, but you know that they're in a safe place, you can breathe.
That's right.
You can then, your nervous system, it's time for recovery.
Exactly. Even as you said that, my whole body just went, it's like reliving it in a nanosecond.
I know, I was reliving it when you were describing it. It just took me there too. So I want to just circle back on the midlife too. How have you embraced this transformation? And I think both of you are also have leaned into nature as being sort of a part of this transformative time and starting new things. And, Eileen, I think you took up snowboarding, and
Yeah.
Dana is doing a lot of yoga in the outdoors as well. Like, what new things are you beginning at this
Such a great
midlife?
question. Yeah, I think, it's such a great opportunity for all three of us to share our kind of midlife empowerment practices. And for me, I would say the biggest transformation in midlife for me was letting go. It wasn't actually letting go. It was growing up from the roles I thought I had to do to perform. My uh, younger self didn't know that I had the freedom to choose differently. So my growth curve, my growth edge was to become so consumed by the role that life required me to revolt from it. That was my midlife
You were
revolution.
always a rebel anyhow. You were
True.
a rebel as a
Oh my
teenager
gosh.
too,
True, true.
Eilina.
This is true. And I just hope that my rebelliousness just serves, others. Like, hey, permission to let go of anything that feels so burdenous. Because I would say that the flavor that I felt my whole life was like burden. And so maybe this is my spiritual expansion, is turning burden into freedom. Oh, there you go. That was my
I
midlife
love that.
transformation. Turning burden into
I
freedom.
just felt your butterfly wings just like
Mm.
appear out of like, yeah, that was just amazing.
I'll share a little story on that freedom side. I've had these messages all summer long from my friends, the herons.
Oh,
I
yes.
have nicknamed Harry the heron, who's always at my side when I go down to my nature spot. He's always there, as are all his family friends. And the messaging of the heron is patience. And so I've been working on a lot of new projects coming out this year. I've been expanded into Ayurveda as well as the body work that I've done for so many years in personal training. And so this is a reinvention in real time. And there's all these little things that aren't quite there yet, aren't quite there yet. So these
Mm,
herons have been consistently messaging me of patience and patience. And I'm like,
mm,
okay, I'll stay patient. It's not time yet. It's not time yet. So I went in for a visit with our practitioner who is an acupuncturist and a shaman, and she takes us on these kind of guided journeys. And it was around the full moon. We've shared on the pod about how I associate, letting go around the full
mm,
moon. And so I went in with this intention of to completely let go of anything that was remaining within that was holding me back. And so I went on this journey with her, and the heron showed up, in this
mm.
this vision. And we actually had this beautiful moment where we were side by side, and she guided me to actually be side by side, but I actually became this
Mm.
heron, and I had this beautiful um, vision of they've got these amazing wingspans when they open up, and they're just
Yeah.
they can really compact, and then they open and they just go. So here I was in this journey, and I was wrapped in this heron robe, like I was his feathers, we were one. And the message that came through to me was fly free.
Oh my god.
And with
Mm.
that, I could actually feel this moment of just expansion and as I took off in this coat of the
Wow.
heron, of Harry's coat.
Oh my god.
And it was just a beautiful experience and a message for me that it was time. It was time to fly free.
Oh.
All of these
Oh,
pieces are almost, tied up, and now it's just time to go fly. So I relate very much to that
Wow.
fly free and the freedom messaging that's coming
Yeah.
through at this age and this stage.
Wow,
I got a
thank you for
massive
sharing.
shiver down my spine when you share like, my whole body had that experience, like, it just so resonated with the vision that you described.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That was so powerful.
In our pod today, we kind of touched as a theme on the beauty of the beginner's mind. Like when we release the responsibility or burdens around roles, we come back to creativity. And in creativity, there is beginnings. And what Shunryu Suzuki says is that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few.
It reminds me a lot of, how the old retirement commercials, Freedom 55. I feel like we're actually reinventing Freedom 55 because I don't know about you
Yes.
guys, but I'm not retiring in 3 years. I'm not there financially, and I still have a lot to give. So, what about, it's still Freedom 55, but it's not about necessarily retirement. It's about what's new. What am I starting again? And that's the freedom of middle age.
What a great way to end. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, soul friends. Thanks to you, we're building a beautiful community. We hope you find our conversations interesting and helpful. If you do, you can help us by liking the podcast, sharing it with friends, and following it for updates. Click on like, share, and follow on your podcast platform, and we will continue to meet you here in this beautiful space with our conversations and our guests.